Located at the inner end of Orland's Fjord is a tiny little village by the name of Flam, Norway. Even though its tiny population is only 350, Flam has a surprising array of adventurous things to do for Norwegian tourists.
Nothing to hold me back, take my time, just enjoy the
If you're wondering what to do in Flam from your cruise ship, today you'll learn how to maximize your one day in Flam, Norway. Hey guys, I'm Indigo. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about some of the best things to do in Flam, Norway. I was lucky enough to go to Flam earlier this summer and it was beautiful. And even though we were on a cruise, so we were only there for one day, we were able to do and see so much because we went on a tour. The best things to do and see in Flam and around Flam require you to drive there to get to them. So I 100% recommend going on a tour. And the tour that we did, which I'm going to talk a lot about, was fantastic. You got to hear about the culture and the history of the area. You got to learn about the sites that you were seeing. You got to stop at so many amazing places, including Stegastein Viewpoint, Borgund Stave Church, Snowy Road, and more. So I will link the exact tour that we took in the description in case you are interested. We started our day off in Flam at one of my favorite parts of the entire Norway cruise, and that was visiting Stegastein Viewpoint. Stegastein Viewpoint is hands down one of the best things to do in Flam. Although it requires you to take a tour or eMobility car to get there, you will be rewarded with unmatchable views of Flam and the Orland's Fjord. We took our tour through Velkommen Norway, which includes Stegastein and several additional stops, which I will show you next. Moreover, the modern architecture of the viewpoint offers an artsy twist on a roadside pullover, and the fjord views are utterly breathtaking. When I say this is one of the best views we saw on our entire trip of Norway, I am not kidding. Between the beautiful blue fjord water to the radiating blue mountains, this view from Stegastein Viewpoint is just unbeatable. I honestly cannot recommend Stegastein Viewpoint enough. If you only do one thing in Flam, make it Stegastein Viewpoint. On our way to our next tour stop, we passed through Snowy Road, a road located in the Norwegian Highlands that is regularly buried in 40 plus feet of snow during the winter months. Even in the summertime, you'll see plenty of snow on the road, half-frozen lakes, and mossy green rolling hills. And located on Snowy Road is the beautiful Flotane Waterfall, which is one of the stops that we took on this tour. Flotane Waterfall is an epic 500-foot waterfall, or 150 meters, that pours into a shining blue lake. A highlight of the same tour, this waterfall resides deep in Norway's Highlands, right off of Snowy Road. There's a short 5-minute walk from the parking lot to the lakefront. There you'll see the falls across the water, but if you have time, definitely walk the trail along the shoreline to get a closer view of the falls. Then, after passing through magnificent national park worthy scenery, lots of waterfalls, lots of green trees, incredible rolling hills, and skyscraping mountains, was an iconic traditional Norwegian wooden church called a Stave Church. The specific one that we visited was the Borgund Stave Church. Borgund Stave Church, which is centuries old, is built of preserved wood and numerous religious artifacts. Although we couldn't enter the church because of recent federal regulations that Norway has put in place to protect these Stave churches, the view from the exterior is just as impressive, if not more impressive, than the interior. I personally was really excited for this stop because in Wisconsin, we actually have at least two Stave Church replicas. Because of all of our Scandinavian heritage in this state, there are two replicas of Stave churches, one in Door County, the Bjornlunden Stave Church, I believe it's called, and then also the Washington Island Stave Kirk, which is located just off the tip of Door County in Washington Island. I've been to both of these Stave churches, which are absolutely beautiful. If you live in Wisconsin or are visiting Wisconsin, I definitely recommend making a stop in Door County and Washington Island to see those churches. Nonetheless, I was really excited to see a real, authentic Norwegian one, to see how they compare to the replicas in Wisconsin, and the replicas were actually fantastic because basically the one that we saw in Norway was just on a much bigger scale, but they looked identical. It was so cool to be able to compare them. Other than the Stave Church, our last big stop on this tour was in Laerdal, the town that's situated in Norway's longest and deepest fjord. This is the most inland that we got during our entire Norway cruise, and it did not disappoint. The mountain views were beautiful, the bakeries were delicious, the town, which was a very pretty, quaint, old wooden town, was beautiful, overlooking the fjord. And I really am glad that we got to stop here, because if we had been traveling on our own, we probably never would have thought to come here, but it was very cool to be in the deepest fjord of Norway. Here you can also visit the Wild Salmon Center. Salmon is huge in Norway. You could visit the Hog Church, which is another old traditional wooden church. Or, like I mentioned earlier, you can get a pastry from a local bakery. If you haven't already guessed, this tour was fantastic. I honestly would recommend it to anyone visiting Flam. If you have a short visit in Flam or a cruise port day in Flam, I definitely recommend this tour, because you will get to see so much of Flam and the surrounding areas, so much more than you would get to visit on other tours. Some of the other popular tours were only to Stegastein or only to like 1 or 2 waterfalls. This tour had so much. We got to see so much in a matter of, 4-ish hours, that we felt like we got to see Flam in its entirety, even though we were only there for 1 day. My favorite stop on the tour was hands down Stegastein. The views of the fjord were just beautiful, and the modern architecture of the lookout point is just stunning. It's very Scandinavian influenced and very natural. It's made of wood, so it just like blends in with the scenery and looks so good, contrasting the big blue mountains in the background and the views of the fjord. It was probably the best view of the Norway fjords that we got on the whole trip. Again, I will link the exact tour that we took and with all of these stops below in the description if you're interested. But if you are interested in something other than a tour, I definitely recommend either renting an eMobility car if you're adventurous enough to visit Stegastein Viewpoint. These are basically mini 2-seater cars that you can take. They have pre-routed GPS systems inside of them, so you can pick the Stegastein Viewpoint as your destination. It's already should be pre-routed in the car. You can take that up to the viewpoint to see it at leisure. Do be careful though, because the roads are teeny tiny. If you are coming from the US, the 2-way roads up the mountain are like the size of our 1-way roads. So definitely be careful. This is not for the faint of heart. And these roads are also right next to the cliffs with very limited barriers. So obviously it feels a little bit sketchy. The Norwegians do it all the time, but it can feel very sketchy for those of us who are not used to that driving. So just be cautious, and I just want to put that warning out there in case you are not up for that adventure. On the other hand, you can take a kayak through the fjord right from the beach that's along the cruise port. After you get off your ship, you'll see a big park and a big beach area, which is a great place to look at the views of the fjord as well. You will see a few kayak rental companies with their kayaks stacked up over there, and you can rent a kayak. You can pre-book your kayak rentals as well online. I'll link the kayak rental companies below too. And I recommend doing that in advance just because there are thousands of passengers coming off the cruise ship, so then you can make sure that all the kayak rentals aren't sold out and that you'll get one the day that you're there if you want to kayak. You can kayak through the fjords, past waterfalls, maybe even see some Norwegian wildlife like seals if you're lucky, eagles if you're lucky, and lots of seagulls, of course. But even more than the wildlife, you're going to be able to kayak through one of the prettiest places that you'll probably ever get to kayak in your life. So that would be my next best recommendation. Also, the Flam Market is right outside the cruise port. It was open when we were there. I believe we were there on a Monday or a Sunday or a Monday, and everything was open in the market. Even after our tour, we had an hour or two to leisurely walk through the market. They had lots of food trucks with Norwegian foods. My sister tried a moose burger. They had whale that you could try there. It was a great little food truck markety area. Plus they had a lot of souvenir stores. So definitely check out the market if you want to get a souvenir. But to recap, to spend the ultimate 1 day in Flam, Norway, here's your itinerary. 1, you're gonna walk from the cruise port to the Velkommen Norway bus stop, which is literally like a 5-minute walk. It's super easy to get to. 2, your drive with the tour to Stegastein Viewpoint. 3, you'll pass through the Norway Highlands on Snowy Road. 4, you'll stop at Flotane Waterfall. 5, you'll try a Norwegian pastry in the bakery of Laerdal, or visit the Wild Salmon Center if that piques your interest. 6, you'll continue on to the Borgund Stave Church. 7, you'll head back to Flam Town Center to end the tour. 8, you'll walk through the Flam Market before your all aboard time and perhaps try a moose burger. And 10, you can just enjoy the beach area and the park area before you get back on the ship. Speaking of the beach, for those of you who are into cold plunges, this would also be probably the best place to cold plunge in the Norway fjords if you're taking a cruise. That beach would be perfect for a cold plunge dip if you so please. I personally did not take part in a cold plunge, but it did look very refreshing and chilly. But other than that, this is exactly what we did in Flam from our cruise ship, and the day was packed full with the best things to do and see. I feel like we were able to experience Flam in its entirety, even though we were only there in one day, and all of these locations were just beautiful and felt so authentic to Norwegian culture and Norwegian nature. If you want to hear more about my Norway trip and get some key Norway trip tips and destination guides, definitely follow me on Instagram. I have been posting all about our Norway Fjords cruise there with lots of tips, lots of guides to all the cruise port cities that we visited, and lots of photos to go along with them. So I would love if you wanted to join me in my adventures over on Instagram. Give me a follow. If you have any questions about Norway and visiting Flam, definitely send me a DM. I always try to respond to all my DMs, so don't be afraid to reach out. And I cannot wait to share more destination guides from Norway in the coming few weeks. Next week, I will be releasing a travel guide for Road Norway, which was my ultimate favorite cruise stop on our Norway cruise. So I'm very excited to release that, as well as maybe Borgund and Stavanger. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss those. Other than that, I hope this video was helpful, and I am so excited for you to visit Flam because you are going to love it. It is just stunning. Other than that, I will see you in next week's video about Road Norway. For now, ciao.